Hello and welcome to this very special episode of India Revival Mission. As the world deals with an unprecedented pandemic crisis triggered by a virus that many say and many have blamed China for, India aims to rejig the new world order by offering its might as a nation to bring the world together as one. With unmatched human resources, scale and economic diversity, India wants to stand tall in the new world order as we chart out a way beyond the COVID pandemic. In a highly inspiring plan led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Atmanirbharta vision with a worldview has already kicked off as it tries to balance India's local aspirations and unprecedented foreign investment goals with China taking a beating in its already diminishing stature in this world pandemic. Today, I have with me top voices from the government, industry, and voices from the field of marketing, people who've made brands by working on them and people who have sold these brands and made them household names. Will we pave the way for indigenous job creation and give a chance to budding entrepreneurs with the reforms that are all set to kick in? Are we looking at a new economic powerhouse India? To discuss all that and more, let me introduce to you my powerhouse panel this evening. And joining me tonight is Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO of Niti Aayog, the man who's been working behind the scenes to convert every plan of the government to reality. He was the author of the Make in India campaign, and now he will decode what the Prime Minister means by growing vocal about local. Also joining me tonight is Mr. R.S. Sodhi, known to be heading the biggest brand of India, Amul India. Also with us this evening are Rajiv Bajaj, who is the MD of Bajaj Auto. Joining us tonight is also Puneet Chhatwal, MD and CEO of the Indian Hotel Corporation. Really, if you want to know, Taj, the Taj group of hotels as everybody knows it. And of course, marketing guru and consulate chief Suhail Seth. And also joining us in just a bit is going to be Piyush Pandey, the man who's written many lines to sell many stories and many products and create brands out of products that become aspirational for every Indian to own and to use. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me. And first coming to you, Mr. Amitabh Kant. I want to know from you, because there is a debate that has begun about the Atmanirbharta vocal for local call made by the Prime Minister. Is this about protectionism that we're hearing about from the rest of the world? Or is this about taking Indian brands and making them global? Which side is this to be deciphered? Because that's the biggest issue that has stirred up a debate in the Indian economic space.
So Navika, when the Prime Minister in his very, very remarkable speech talked about making India Atmanirbhar or self-reliant, some misconstrued it as mean looking inwards. There could be nothing further from the truth. To my mind, what the Prime Minister, and I've read his speech very, very closely, when he's talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, he's not talking about closing India off from the world. In fact, he's talking just the opposite. It is about making India self-confident and self-reliant to take global competition head on. It is about India taking its rightful place in global supply chains. It is empowering the millions of our MSMEs to raise their quality and competitiveness. And it is about harnessing our demographic dividend to usher in a phase of sustained growth that will see India transformed. To my mind, Atmanirbhar Bharat, in the Prime Minister's mind, is about making India self-confident to take on global markets. For instance, just look at how Indians, we work collectively in this crisis to scale up manufacturing of ventilators, PPEs, masks, sanitizers, medical equipments. In just 15 days, we rolled out Arogya Setu, which has over 100 million downloads, and in 10 days' time, we've brought in telemedicine scaled at an unprecedented pace, and these are all global products. At the same time, we must realize that we import nearly 5 lakh crores worth of minerals, and we are full of minerals. We belong to the same Gondwana region as Australia. We import about close to 2 lakh crore worth of coal. We are full of coal resources. We import about 3 lakh crore worth of electrical equipment, and these are all India's sectors of strength. Why should we do this? And we have an adverse balance of trade. So what the Prime Minister is saying is India's large domestic market, along with sustained inclusive growth, will ensure that in terms of purchasing power, the Indian domestic markets does not have any rival. And Atmanirbhar Bharat can ensure that we leverage our domestic market in a big way, and we create Indian brands as global brands who can compete in global markets. I mean, Atmanirbhar is not just about domestic markets. It's about using the strengths of our domestic market to penetrate global markets. And we play a bigger role in global value chains and global supply chains. That is the objective of Atmanirbhar Bharat. And it's about India being a very integral part of global supply chains. And therefore, to my mind, Atmanirbhar Bharat means Indian companies competing globally with the best of brands. So far, Indian companies have been successful in the domain of software services, but in terms of manufacturing products, Indian brands do not have the recognition of their American or Japanese counterparts. Why can't Indian brands be seen at par with global brands? Why shouldn't they be? What has been holding them back? And therefore, Atmanirbhar Bharat aims to facilitate the arrival of Indian brands as global, brands. I mean, look at in the field of textiles. Why shouldn't Fab India scale up operations to global levels, creating lakhs of farmers, assisting them, and involved in the value chain? This is the intention behind Atmanirbhar Bharat. Why shouldn't Amul or why shouldn't Haldiram have the processing capabilities and market linkage to serve the world? And why shouldn't I really like Rajiv Bajaj, who's there, and why shouldn't Bajaj? And I greatly admire him because he's supplying vehicles in the rest of the world. Why shouldn't Royal Enfield, Tata Motors, Hero, all of them become global champions as they have done remarkably well in the international markets? Why shouldn't they be the Toyotas of the world? Why shouldn't Sun Pharmaceutical or Himalaya make Ayurvedic products which become example for the rest of the world? So Prime Minister is very clear: make India a global champion.
Well, Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, I want to ask you, it's a very passionate point that has been made by Mr. Amitabh Kant. But he's raised these questions. These brands have been there. Amul has been there. Bajaj has been there. But why is Bajaj not a Toyota? Why is Bajaj not a Honda? Why have we taken so long, to recognize and make this into a reality? Any thoughts on what's held us back? Is it lack of quality attention that private companies have not paid, or is it lack of support from the government over the last several decades?
Well, Navika, I would say the short answer is it has nothing to do with the lack of support, which doesn't mean that government cannot do better in many respects. But leave that aside, because that is common to all of us in this country, those who have become global and those who haven't. Let me tell you a little bit about our journey. In the early 90s, I asked my father, what is it that you want to do at Bajaj? And he said, do what you think best, but be the best in what you do. And I asked him what that means. And he said, I think to be the best means to be a global company. Bajaj had been very successful through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, but we were very much a domestic company. Like Mr. Kant points out, almost everything we made was sold in this country. It was only somewhere towards the end of the 90s that we started making a push for being a global company. And today, almost half of what we make is exported, and not just to, if I may say so, the subcontinent or to Africa, but to US, to Europe, to Japan, to UK, to Australia, everywhere. So I don't know how we measure up vis-a-vis Toyota, but we are well on our way to having made the transition from Hamara Bajaj to today we call ourselves the world's favorite Indian. Now, coming to your question on what is the single biggest impediment, I would say the single biggest impediment is the lack of focus, because focus affects both perception and performance. What I mean about perception is that those who stand for everything stand for nothing. Just to illustrate, I would pick up one name that Mr. Kant articulated, Tata's, for example. I mean, can you imagine Volvo that makes trucks also making salt in the same brand? Probably not. It appears absurd. So I think to compete on perception, as you build a position in the mind of the customer worldwide is very, very important. And somebody like my marketing guru, Piyush, can give us a long lecture on this subject. Second is in terms of performance. For example, it is said, if you do something for 10,000 hours, you are likely to be quite an expert at it. So when a company like us makes only motorcycles, from design through manufacturing to sales and service, we are likely to do better than companies that do motorcycles and scooters and mopeds and cars and trucks and everything else. So I think this is the lack of focus, to me, is the single most important shortcoming. And why does this happen? To close, I would say this happens because it is part of human nature, and if I may say so, human ego, to believe that more is more. Whereas marketing is contra-intuitive. Less is more. The sharper you are, the deeper you go. So unless we can think in contra-intuitive terms, i.e., for example, think less about the harder stuff like technology or product or performance, and think more about the softer stuff like strategies and brand and perceptions, that's when we will begin to solve the puzzle on a global scale.
Well, that's a viewpoint that I don't know Puneet Chhatwal will share, because he represents the Tata Group here as the brand Taj Hotel. So Puneet Chhatwal, if you're running hotels, you're making cars, running airlines, and also making salt, does it take away from the focus, as Rajiv Bajaj says?
I don't necessarily agree with what he's. If you use the same brand name, sell everything, then the more is more is a contradiction with less is more. So I think there are different ways to address this. First, let's say why are the brands not become as global as they should have been? So one is, where do they stand in their own life cycle? Every brand has its life cycle. So we have 5 different hotel brands. But Taj is the brand which is a 116-year legacy, whereas on the bottom of the pyramid we have Ginger, which is less than 20 years. Now, nobody says Taj Ginger or Ginger by Taj, and neither is the connotation Ginger attached to Taj. So they're very, from a brand management perspective, they're very clearly positioned. And some of the brands are not meant to be international. So Ginger is not meant to be an international brand. It's meant to be a domestic brand, because you need a very big scale to make that work internationally. And most of the brands in this segmentation and this positioning are domestic brands. It doesn't matter which company you want to take. The second comes this whole thing about globalization. Most of the brands in our sector have evolved as the travel patterns of the people have evolved. So when the Americans started traveling, a lot of American brands came in the forefront. In the last 10 years, the Chinese have become the owner of the major hotel portfolios or the majority of the branded hotel supply in the world coming out of nowhere because the Chinese started traveling. I think today we have 26 million Indians traveling. When that number doubles or triples or becomes 100 million, you'll suddenly start seeing a lot more evolution of Indian brands. And last not least, I think we should not forget that some of these countries did not become independent when India became independent. So I think we are maybe at a very opportune moment. The message of the Honorable Prime Minister is also at a very opportune moment. Why is this an opportune moment? Because every crisis is also an opportunity. And I think we can leverage this opportunity and make some of our brands global, and they deserve to be global. And for us, especially the Taj brand is a no-brainer because everybody understands Taj, not just as hotel. If you had a prompted or an unprompted awareness survey anywhere in the world and asked people to name 2 Indian names that they would know of, then one of that would be Gandhi, the other one would be Taj, and recently emerging is the name of our Honorable Prime Minister. So Taj absolutely is a no-brainer. It is already international. It is in New York, in the best location. It is in London, behind the Buckingham Gate. It is in Cape Town, in the bottom of South Africa. And it is in Dubai, not presence one, with one dot on the map in Dubai, rather very soon 4 Taj properties in Dubai. It is in Southeast Asia. And the question is, how do we leverage it without losing what we call our domestic positioning? We are the
very important point. Very important point, because domestic positioning, the domestic market is actually the driving strength. So let me get the marketing gurus in. Piyush Pandey. Piyush Pandey, you've launched many brands. And what do you think is the reason why Indian brands haven't made, despite their reliability in the Indian context, despite the fact that they are hugely popular and successful in the Indian subcontinent, they haven't really made the cut when it comes to global brands and household names that global brands have become in converse in India?
I think it's very simple. In Prime Minister's speech, it was said very clearly, he underlined the word prachar. If we don't believe in our brands, if we don't believe in proliferating our brands, if we don't believe in creating a consumer connect, as they say that products are made in factories, brands are made in the hearts of people. If we don't invest in creating brands, if we don't invest in making great products, how will we have brands which are locally famous as well as internationally famous? So it requires a lot of belief in yourself and believing that your message should reach the people.
So Suhail said, I want to ask you, these brands, when you want to make them absolutely popular and world class and cutting edge at the global level, what does it take to make these brands? Do you think they need support from governments, or do you think, as Rajiv Bajaj pointed out, focus from the company itself rather than having a diverse portfolio? The exact opposite view of what Puneet Chhatwal gave. Where do you stand on this, and what does it really take, and how do we move on from here, given the fact that Make in India, many say, hasn't been that kind of a success? Do you think Atmanirbharta is 2.0 of Make in India?
In India is a great thing. I could not.
Navika, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I could not hear Rajiv, but my take on what Rajiv has said is that first make the kind of products that have a pull, then create the marketing connect with the people that you are selling to. I don't think you can depend on the government at all. You have to depend on the government to help you create great products. You have to promote them yourself. I don't think we are starting a Sehkari Bandar in the world. The manufacturers have to create great products. The government has to give them the platform, but then they have to promote themselves. I know that Rajiv promotes his brands in South America and in Africa, but because he's trying to create a brand. It's not a trading activity.
Okay, Suhail.
Navika, I have 3 or 4 things to say, and I'll say them very quickly. I think Rajiv Bajaj is being very unfair to his family, because Bajaj, like the Tatas, also make Brahmi, Amla oil, electricals, in addition to motorcycles, scooters. They may not be the same company, but it's the same overarching brand name, because people begin to trust the overarching brand, qua perhaps in the Tatas. But I want to come back to the point that Amitabh Kant made, and that's an important point. I think the Prime Minister has basically only conveyed one message, that let Make in India and Made by India become globally competitive and globally relevant. For years, our government policies, our licensing Raj, did not allow enough infusion of capital for Indian companies to invest large sums of monies that both Rajiv and Piyush spoke about while you promote a brand. That is changing today. I mean, Amitabh Kant himself ran an Incredible India campaign which went all over the world promoting Indian tourism. So when we have the will, we have the way. But the will has been weak for a long, long time post-independence in India. If you look at brands like Amul, if you look at brands like Nirma, if you look at brands that even while existing in India gave MNCs huge competition, that was only for one reason. Consumers will not buy brands because of their nationality. Consumers will buy brands because of their excellence and their relevance. My old marketing mantra is, consumers don't buy brands, they buy benefits. The benefits are both emotional and rational. You can't expect only rational benefits to sell. I mean, look at you guys, Times Now or Bennett Coleman, Times of India. You've created a brand in journalism, a brand of media, which in profit terms or value terms is as competitive as anywhere in the world. So I don't think there is a lack of courage, but there is a lack of capital, and there is a lack, as Rajiv said, of focus. If we are able to bridge these two, I think the world is our oyster. But having said that, please don't convert this into a jingoistic battle for brand market share. The Indian consumer must be allowed his or her choice, whether the choice is for Indian brands or non-Indian brands. This will only weigh heavily in favor of Indian brands if they can measure up in terms of excellence and global competitiveness. We've done it in hospitality, we've done it in software, but here's my point, Navika. We've got some of the finest software companies in the world out of India. Why did we not create a Facebook? Why did we not create a Google? Why did we not create these brands out of India? There must be a reason. So while I love the evangelical style of Amitabh Kant, I think it's time for India and all of us to reflect on what prevented us, with all the fine minds we have, from doing what we've done. Today, a Piyush Pandey is the global creative director of Ogilvy. So things are possible. But we need to check what are the impediments and get rid of those impediments.
So, Mr. Amitabh Kant, being an author of many brands yourself, God's Own Country, when you were in Kerala, Incredible India, Make in India, and the designing of the strength and the power of the tiger. You've done this. What would you want to respond to, let's say, Rajiv Bajaj or Suhail Seth, who say that there is something that's not quite there, the chemistry to make a Google or a Facebook, despite India being such an IT wizard in the world and recognized for it?
So Navika, first and foremost, I would say that I think every single manufacturer or an IT company, the focus has to be on quality and excellence. We should look at our domestic market, the size and scale, but eventually we should think of using it as a springboard to penetrate global markets. And we must understand that the international market gives you 5x of what you get in the domestic market. And therefore, it's important that we sell in India, but it's important that we penetrate in India. But that requires a huge amount of quality excellence, and it requires us over a period of time to build brands. And brands is about creating an emotional connect. And therefore, this requires building up distribution, retail networks, emotional appeal, and first and foremost, a great focus on top-class quality. And that is something which the Indian manufacturers must totally focus on, that we are going to produce products which will excel. And secondly, I think India must use now technology to leapfrog. What COVID-19 has done is brought everybody to the same level. India has created the Jam Trinity. It has created great products of digital payments. It has created the Arogya Setu. Now, we must take all these products global. And secondly, we must in a range of new areas, because quite often we in India get into the sunset areas of industries, and it's very difficult to penetrate sunset areas. We must get into the sunrise areas of industries. We must get into electric mobility. We must get into battery manufacturing. We must get into genomics. We must get into, in a very big way, use artificial intelligence to leapfrog, and we should not delay a great big jump towards the 5G technology, which will transform the world in the coming days. So the sunrise areas of industries will really make India jump forward in new areas of growth.
Mr. Sodhi, heading a brand like Amul, which is not just an emotional connect that it has with the people across the country. The fact of the matter is that these brands have grown over a period of time. In the olden days, it used to take that kind of time for brands to become household names. But in recent times, we see, success coming in a shorter period of time. A Facebook or Twitter or Google haven't taken that long to establish their credentials as a brand. How do you distinguish between, is it because those are brands that are being made in the IT world, which is why they are faster, they come in faster, and probably some of them get destroyed faster, and it is a different issue when you are connecting with people with the things that they use in their day-to-day lives. How do you look at all of this, and how do you think India can have more and more of these brands in the world market? A point that Sohail says, we've had so many software companies, we've had so many companies like Bajaj, Taj, but there are just so few, you can count them on your fingertips, known globally.
Yeah, Navika ji, you're right that earlier it used to take a lot of long time, and now this Facebook, Google, Twitter, because these brands have captured the gaps. There were no earlier brands in this category. This was emerging category or even IT category, and they captured this category. And definitely, if there is any product which come up with a product differentiation which does not exist today, which is one level above than the existing. Now, making a brand is easy, but it is extremely difficult because market is also very much saturated. And coming to the second point, like Sohailji said, you see what our Honorable Prime Minister said, vocal for local, and local going global. You can't make a global brand if in domestic market you are not the market leader. See, in food today, more than 50% market is the local brand. But that may not be true for durables or electronics. So you can't think becoming any Indian brand becoming global and you don't have market dominance or market leadership in India. So first, India is 1.35 billion, fastest growing market. And like somebody mentioned that why we don't look Amul goes globally and become please let me tell you in word which is the fastest growing food market? India. Like in dairy, organized dairy market is growing at the rate of 12%. World is growing less than 2%. That too mainly because India contributed 20%. Whole world, all the world brand of coming to India. More than half a dozen brand are tried, half of them packed up also. So our first duty is to protect Indian stuff, protect India because it is growing, and then think about going global. You see, let me also tell you, what do you mean global branding? Global brand means that wherever it is manufactured, wherever it is sold, whichever countries, beside getting the royalty and technical fee, you are getting increase in valuation. See, any global
point. So let me ask Rajiv Bajaj this question. Rajiv Bajaj, the point Mr. Sodhi is making is that global brand and positioning of Indian products can only happen if you are market leaders in India itself, and India is a growing market. Most countries and most companies are interested to make inroads into India because of the huge market that we have to offer. Do you think in the days and weeks and months to come, with China being looked at in a strategically, with a suspicious kind of geopolitical situation, do you think India has the opportunity this time which can give us the kind of impetus that the Prime Minister is hinting at?
Well, Jack Welch said at GE that if I'm not number one or number two in my business, I will exit that business. And there is a very sound marketing logic for that. So I completely agree with Mr. Sodhi in that I do not know of really any significant global player who became global from a point of weakness, i.e. he was not at first strong in his own domestic market. And the Indian market gives all of us strength for obvious reasons. For example, Bajaj is the second largest motorcycle maker in India. And that's a great position of strength in every sense, from technology to cost structure. And without that, it would be very, very difficult for us to go and try and establish ourselves overseas. So I completely agree with what he says.
Suhail wants to come in. Yes, Suhail?
As Rajiv just touched upon, this is a very, very important issue. Now, you look at the two motorcycle companies in India, two two-wheeler companies. There's Hero and there's Bajaj. When Hero split from Honda, when they parted ways, Hero continues to maintain market leadership because they've also continuously perhaps invested in technology and quality and excellence. So as Sodhi ji said, there is no question, Navika, consumers will not buy a second grade brand just because it happens to be wrapped in the Indian tricolor. No consumer will buy that. Consumers will buy great brands irrespective of country of origin. The advantage that Indian companies in India have is they understand the Indian psyche better, and in the good old days they understood the Indian bureaucracy even better. But the reality is the idiom that a Piyush Pandey can apply to a Cadbury's which wants to sell chocolates in India or to Asian Paints will never be the same in a market like, let's say, in Connecticut or in Philadelphia. So the argument very clearly is Indian brands, because of excellence, quality, and perhaps cost competitiveness, are well poised to conquer the world only if they continue to measure their excellence globally and communicate as if each global market was an independent market in itself. I mean, look at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is also producing variants of beverages which are inspired from Indian beverage habits. Domino's introduced a keema pizza. McDonald's introduced an aloo mak burger. So the point is, would you then say that this is a global brand? I would say actually it's a brand that is catering to Indian tastes. So that to my mind is the essence, and I think the Prime Minister is right. There is no better time, there are no better people, and there is no better country than poised to take the world on with vigor, with vitality, with robustness, if we only have three things working: focus, excellence, and cost competitiveness.
Well, Piyush Pandey, the other point that's important is the point that Mr. Sodhi touched upon, that companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter got into the gaps where there were no solutions, so they found instant success. Are Indian companies losing out on that to find those gaps where you can get in? The point Amitabh Kant also talked about. The fact is, are we getting into sunset sectors being a Me Too kind of offering that we bring onto the table, rather than getting into the sunrise sectors and take larger risks? Are Indians getting averse to risk as entrepreneurs and large investors?
See, Navika, it's a mix of both. We will find gaps in the market, but I personally believe, and that's my understanding what the Prime Minister is saying, have self-belief, make great products. People have entered markets which had similar products and done a great job of it because you made a better offering. Gaps will always not be available. There will be gaps that one will have to seek. But do we give up till we find the gaps? Did Rajiv Bajaj give up, or did many other companies give up? No. They will try and self-improve, and the world will say, what is happening in India? What is Bajaj up to? What is X up to? And then you have to be product ready to take it outside. Gaps is a wonderful way of looking at it. I agree with Mr. Sodhi, but gaps is not the only thing. There is an existing scenario. There's a buzz that happens in a 1.3 billion people country. The world watches. When I went, as Suhail mentioned many times, when I was recognized on the global scene, it was because the world was saying, what the hell is happening in India? And they said, yeah, a couple of people are making it happen, let's meet them. And then you have to go out. So it's not that I was doing anything different. It's not that Rajiv Bajaj is making space motorcycles. He is making better motorcycles. And people are saying, hello, what's happening in India? I would say that on a general level, let's not give up. Let's try and make things better. And as Suhail said, better, affordable, attractive, and then promote them. And
absolutely. And Puneet Chhatwal, that's the issue. People have to sit back and say, hey, something's happening in India. Can we make that happen? Can we actually disconnect ourselves from the internal dynamics of India, because we are a democracy, everything has different connotations here, and can we just concentrate on one thing, which is that we've got to make the world sit back and notice that yes, there is an Amul happening in India, there's a Bajaj happening in India, there is an Arogya Setu happening in India, and there is a Taj happening in India, and there are going to be many more things happening in India. Is that possible? And for that, what do you think is the role of the private sector and the investors, and what's the role of the government?
See, the opportunity is great. As has been said, the timing is right. Our brands are in a very mature phase of their life cycle. We can always address the issues of a branded house or a house of brands that should be left to each company. Democracy is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing. We should be proud that we have the largest democracy and have the freedom to do what we want to do and is not dictated. So I think all the parameters are positive. What Suhail has said, the three factors, including focus and including cost competitiveness, but I would actually call it a value proposition. It's not just the cost part of it, the whole perception of value, the whole perception of quality, the whole perception of excellence. This is the moment to do it. Let's do it now.
Mr. Amitabh Kant, Do you think India is now ready, and India will also have to make structural changes that the Prime Minister spoke about? Land, labor, liquidity. You know, if we have to attract FDI, foreign direct investments into India, because India must take advantage of the fact that many countries, even if they don't admit it right now, the fact that there are meetings happening between groups of countries which exclude China, there could be a geopolitical shift, and India needs to take advantage of that. So can India be housed to, let's say, Apple phones being manufactured in India, shifting base from China to India, but at the same time have Indian brands growing? And as Piyush Pandey said, you know, the world has to say, hey, something's happening in India. And where do you see the role of the government coming in to make the world aware of, hey, sit back and watch, something's happening in India?
So Navika, I think it's a now or never opportunity, and we must reform, and we must make India become cost competitive. For years, we've been actually taxing our manufacturing sector through higher electricity rate, higher land rates, higher water rates, and that's why our freight costs are very high, and we make manufacturing uncompetitive in the global markets. And what we need to really do is to ensure that we become a very, very cost competitive nation. There is no reason why we should take 15 days at our ports. There's no reason why we should not have quicker offtake during the customs, why we should not ensure that we are amongst the most competitive nations of the world. And I think this would really require us three things to my mind. One is get after quality as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. They must focus only and only and only on quality. The government must focus only on cost competitiveness, and I'm delighted that the labor exporting states of UP, Madhya Pradesh, etc. are now getting their labor and agricultural acts right. That's important. And that's what the governments must do. And thirdly, I think what we must do is to get into new areas of growth, because post-COVID, there will be a huge disruption. And this disruption will ensure that only those will survive who will use technology to leapfrog. And therefore, there is a need to use technology across agriculture, across payments, across manufacturing, and all this is a massive opportunity for India. We are amongst the few countries in the world who've created this technological base. Now use it to become global champion across sectors. This is a now or never opportunity.
Well, this is a now or never opportunity. We have to seize it with both hands. And when the Prime Minister says vocal for local, he wants local brands from India to be competitive in the globe. But at the same time, India to be the house for many international brands to set up shop, because India is the destination that the world should be looking at. It's times now, and the time is now. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me on the India Revival Mission, because for us as a channel, reviving India with a new objective, a new goal is our mission. And the Prime Minister has outlined that as a nation, it should be our mission to conquer the world. Thank you for joining me. And with your views, I do hope we are going to see a new tomorrow, a brighter tomorrow for India.